Good evening, viewers. Today we are here and happy to present to you a very interesting topic that we've been waiting for, especially when it comes to post-harvest management and food safety. And today we have a very good and expertise in terms of delivering the message to you about post-harvest management. We have Dr. Jen Ambuko, Martin Kabaka, and Dixon Kimathi, who are all our able experts this evening to deliver the post-harvest management. We know that we've had a lot of issues when it comes to food losses. In Kenya currently, we are almost at 50% when it comes to when we're talking about food loss. So we are going to delve deeper and be able to understand this subject so that we can understand how to preserve what we have and to be able to ensure that we are having enough to eat and also be able to take care of our food safety. We'll welcome our panelists, starting with Dr. Jen Ambuko. Karibu sana, Daktari. Please unmute your mic.
Yes, I have. So my name is Jane Ambuko. Let me just correct something, not that it matters, but I'm Associate Professor of Horticulture at the University of Nairobi, Department of Plant Science and Crop Protection. So my area of specialization really is in horticulture, but specifically I have focused my research and outreach activities on post-harvest loss reduction, especially working with the smallholder farmers, training them on good post-harvest handling practices to reduce post-harvest losses. Also doing research, taking our research outputs to farmers. So we have quite a number of technologies that we've tried to promote for adoption by smallholder farmers, especially horticultural farmers. I'll be talking about some of them in my presentation. So yes, so I say that I'm trying to play my role in realizing that target of reducing post-harvest losses, especially among smallholder farmers, because really when food is lost, there's a lot lost than just the food. So we really need to address the issues that contribute to these losses. And the challenge is big. So today we're just going to scratch the surface and just talk about a little bit of what we're doing. Thank you.
Asante sana, Daktari Martin.
Yeah, my name is Martin Kimathi Kabaka. Graduated from University of Nairobi in 2002. Went into this horticulture in 2003 as a production vegetable coordinator. I've done planting and everything as a vegetable production manager later in another company. I've then worked as a quality assurance manager in a vegetable pack house. I've gone into flowers, both in the field and in post-harvest. I've been in post-harvest for like 10 years. And I've also now currently I'm doing apps in terms of post-harvest, selling and logistics. Thank you.
Asante sana. Asante sana. So Dixon will be joining us a bit late, but once he joins in, we are going to do the introduction. So we are going to go straight into the presentation and we'll start off with Professor Ambuko's presentation.
No, not that it matters. You correct this because you see, somebody might be wondering why does she, yeah. So there's no problem with the titles, but yeah, sometimes it's good to use when we have to use titles, then we use the right one.
Exactly. Thank you. Okay. Karibu sana.
Thank you. All right. So you're going to project my slides for me?
Ricky is sharing the screen. I think it's already on. You can proceed.
No. It's not at the beginning. It's in the middle. All right. Yes. Okay, so today I'm going to talk about proper cold chain management, which is critical for post-harvest loss reduction in horticultural value chains. And you can see the logos that are put on the right side of my slide. These are partners that are supporting our work at the University of Nairobi on cold storage technologies. So we have those partners. Next slide, please. So this is the outline of my presentation. I'll give a very small background to the issue of post-harvest losses in horticultural value chains, why temperature management is important. Then I'll highlight some simple practices and technologies that farmers can adopt to realize cold chain among them. And then I'll show you something about training opportunity at our just recently established training unit at the University of Nairobi, and then just a concluded remark. Next slide, please. Good. So you see, these images you see here are a reflection of what we see in the marketplace, or not just in the marketplace, just around the supply chain. We see wastage, losses everywhere. And according to the FAO report of 2011, we lose up to 30% of the food that we produce for human consumption. That translates into up to 1.3 billion tons of food is lost or wasted along the supply chains. Next. So when you look at the distribution of the losses in the various commodity groups, so cereals, fruits, veggies, all as you can see on that slide, you see that the losses in fruits and veggies are huge. Actually, according to the reports that are available, the losses in fruits and veggies range between 40 to 50%, and actually sometimes it's even more. But the official figure that we quote for losses in fruits and vegetables is 40 to 50%. Next slide, please. So really this post-harvest losses is a challenge, not just for us here in Kenya, but it's a global challenge. And because of the fact that this is something that is not that we started experiencing post-harvest losses today, is a problem that has been there. People, I mean, there have been initiatives to reduce these losses, but these losses have refused to go away. Now, you can see on those slides that because of the fact that really there has to be some targeted interventions to reduce these losses. Now there are targets that are set at the global level, SDG 12.3, that has set a target of halving the post-harvest losses by the year 2030. And back home in the African continent, the Malabo Declaration is a commitment that the African heads of state have committed to have the losses from the baseline of 2014 to halve by the year 2025. So we are all doing a little bit to contribute towards realization of this target. So there are many fronts to actually address losses. And today we are just going to scratch the surface because really the problem is big and everybody needs to get involved for us to realize these set targets. Next slide, please. So if you look at the horticultural value chains, you want to ask yourself, we saw the losses in horticultural value chain ranging between 40 to 50%. The question is, what are the drivers? What are the factors that contribute to these losses? Now, the factors that contribute to these losses, there are some that we call the pre-harvest factors, which is from the field, and I won't talk about that. And there are those factors that are in after harvest, whatever happened to the produce after it's harvested. And these are many factors, as you can see listed there. But today we'll only focus on a very small component of these post-harvest factors, drivers of losses. So today we're going to look at the poor cold chain management as one of the drivers of losses in horticultural value chains. Next, please. So when you talk about temperature management, why is temperature management so important when it comes to post-harvest loss management or reduction in horticultural value chains? Now, you see in this slide, I put temperature at the center. So there are many factors that contribute to deterioration or losses in perishables or horticultural commodities. Ethylene, pathological deterioration, rotting, as we call it, mechanical injury contributes to losses, water loss, respiration. Now we say that at the center of all this deteriorative process is processes is temperature, meaning when you need to manage all these factors, but then temperature is at the center, in the sense that we say that for every 10 degrees increase in temperature, the rate of spoilage or the rate of deteriorative processes increases 2 to 3-fold. Okay, that means if you had the produce that is stored at 10 degrees C, for example, in a cold room, and produce that is stored in under ambient room conditions, you know, like say room temperature, which is say 22 to 24 degrees C, the rate of spoilage or deterioration of the two will vary by a factor of 3, like 3 times more faster spoilage in the produce that is stored at ambient room conditions. So that means if you can manage temperature, then you manage the other deteriorative processes. Next slide, please. So temperature management is so critical, is so important in preserving quality of harvested produce. So we talk about cold chain, really for horticultural commodities. When we talk about cold chain, basically we're talking about maintaining uninterrupted optimal low temperatures from the time the produce is harvested at the farm to the time it gets to the end user. So it's a chain. So whatever happens, you know, from how it is harvested, whatever happens in the field, transportation or distribution to the end user, we need, if we're to talk about proper cold chain, it means you need to handle this produce at safe, low temperatures all the way without interruption. So whenever there's an interruption in the chain, it means you predispose this produce to faster spoilage. Now, next slide, please. So what are some of the practices that we see that interrupt the cold chain? Now, what you can see here is what I picked these 2 photos because these are common practices that interrupt the cold chain. So what you can see there is mango fruits harvested, you know, under a tree. I won't call it a shed. It's just under the tree because you can see the sun is it's shining right there on them. Now those mangoes are waiting collection, whether it is by the trader or they've been harvested. Somebody placed an order and they're waiting to come and pick the produce. So the produce stays under the tree like that. Now, that produce, what we say, when it stays right there, it could also even just be open without any, this one is a semblance of a shed, but it's not a good shed. But sometimes you just find the produce is open, you know, left there in the field, and basically it accumulates heat. Okay, so this heat you accumulate contributes to faster spoilage of those commodities. Again, on the right side, you can see this is common practice, how we transport our produce. Nobody really cares about the heat that is building up in these bananas that are being transported. And you can see it is, so this is part of the common practices we see that contribute to, you know, interruption of cold chain. You can imagine even if this produce that is on this truck was in a cold room earlier, and then the transporter puts them on a truck like this, basically the cold chain is interrupted. So these are some of the poor cold chain practices that contribute to fast deterioration of horticultural produce. Next slide, please. So when you have done all this, this slide that I'm sharing here is, this is a study that was done by one of my students, and they just followed the chain, you know, what we call proper cold chain practice. When you harvest, how you handle the produce after you've harvested, how you transport them to the you know, to the off farm, or maybe it's a packing house or an aggregation center. So the top row there shows the proper cold chain. So harvested at early in the morning, you can see the pulp temperature is just about 16 degrees C, and the lower one is harvested during mid-morning hours. You can see the temperature of the fruit pulp is 36. So you can see how this food then is transported to the aggregation center, and then they do pre-cooling, and then transferred to a cold room. You can see how the shelf life of those mangoes, for apple, it is extended up to 30 days. And then for Kent, it's extended up to 33 days. And compared to the ones where there's poor cold chain, you can see by day 12 for apple mango, the fruits were already overripe. And by day 15 for Kent, which has a longer shelf life, the fruits were already overripe. So that is what it means. When you do your proper handling, you can extend the shelf life, you can extend the marketing period as compared to when you have what you're calling the poor cold chain practices. Next slide, please. So when you talk about poor cold chain practices, what are some of the good practices that, for me, I remember at the beginning I said I focus on the smallholder farmers. What are some of these practices that the farmers can do which can contribute to, good cold chain? So you can see harvesting during the cooler times of the day, transporting the produce, not leaving them to stay in the field too long. If they should stay in the field, protect them from the sun, have a shade. Okay, otherwise minimize the time from harvest to the time it goes to the pack house or to the storage. Okay, removing the field heat, what you call pre-cooling, before the produce is put maybe in a cold room at the farm level or the pack house, using simple cold storage technologies, which I'll mention next. And then you saw the last slide I showed how transportation is a weak link when you come to cold chain. Produce is usually just transported in open lorries, and that really is a bad practice. Okay, and then whatever happens at the market, whether it's wholesale or retail, produce is just displayed there. Sometimes you see the produce in the market is just in the open, exposed to the sun. So those are the bad practices that really we must take care of if we have to ensure that our produce can last longer after harvest. Next slide, please. So apart from the good practices, yes, apart from the good practices which I've mentioned here, next slide, please. There are also simple technologies, yes, and I'm going to focus on some of the technologies that we have been trying to promote for adoption by smallholder farmers as a way of them trying to also just achieve this, what would actually seem like impossible. Given what we think about cold chain. So there are 3 technologies I'm going to talk about today: the CoolBot cold room, evaporative cooling technologies, and then a new innovation that is based on phase change materials. Next slide, please. So the CoolBot cold room is a technology I have been talking about for a while. We've introduced it to some farmers in Makueni and another group of farmers in Embu Karurumo. So this CoolBot is a very simple technology, and why we're promoting it is that it's really cheap compared to a conventional cold room. It would cost between $6,000 to $6,500, which is really a fraction of the cost of your conventional cold room. And you can see it can actually do as well as a conventional cold room can do. What I've shown there in a graph is just our study showing that actually you achieve and maintain those cold temperatures. These are set for mango. You can see actually it's a technology that farmers can adopt, and it's cheap, it's available. We actually, University of Nairobi has been at the forefront of promoting this innovation. It's an innovation from the US, but we have done studies to domesticate it, to actually build and fabricate the parts that are required to get the CoolBot cold room. So it's a technology that's already available for farmers to use. Next slide, please. Then we have evaporative cooling technologies. Again, maybe some of us are familiar with the charcoal cooler. This is a technology that has been around. People have been using it. Especially I've seen the French bean farmers have been using it. But there are different variants of these evaporative cooling technologies. Apart from the charcoal cooler, we also have the zero energy brick cooler, which again, this one we University of Nairobi, we've piloted it in Kenya, and now we're promoting it. We're trying to see it's very simple, very easy to fabricate, and very cheap. Actually, depending on the location, this the zero energy brick cooler is up to, you can with the up to $200 to $500 you can have that technology installed. And then you can see the little pot there is a technology I've had people talk about. It's called pot in pot. Again, the principle of evaporative cooling. Now this one, as you can see, is very small, but it can be useful at the household level. Next slide, please. And then there's the new innovation. Oh, this slide, I just wanted to demonstrate that you can actually achieve cool temperatures with the evaporative cooling. No electricity, especially this evaporative cooling technology are very good for rural areas without electricity, because there's no electricity required. It's just evaporating water and achieving a cooling effect. You can see we can achieve temperatures between lower than between 5 to 15 degrees C lower than ambient room conditions. No electricity, but very effective to achieve some cooling for produce, especially for farmers in regions that have no electricity. Next slide, please. Then we have the new innovation, which is this is a new innovation which we are just studying research on it. Is phase change materials. Many of us who are probably familiar with cool packs, which you use in our cool boxes when you go to the field. You put them, actually, these are what we call the phase change materials. Now, the phase change materials, basically, they store and release thermal energy during when they melt or they freeze. So we usually pack, when you use these cool packs in your cool box, you put them when it's frozen, and then, of course, it's the same principle like we talk about the evaporative cooling, that when the materials in the cool pack melts, it takes heat from the surrounding and it achieves a cooling effect. Now, this one is pretty new, and the principle behind this is that this pack, the materials that we call phase change materials can actually be used in transport. So we are actually working with our partners in UK to fabricate this kind of technology where we can use it not only for storage but also in transport, where we can actually have the materials lining a trailer like this, and then you can actually achieve cooling on the go without any mechanical refrigeration. Next slide, please. So, so those are, I just highlighted, these are some of the technologies that we have been promoting at the University of Nairobi. And I'll just like at this point to say that we have recently established this unit at our field station. And the essence or the purpose of this unit that we have established is actually to train people on this technology. We're not only training stakeholders, farmers or groups of farmers, whoever. It is pretty new. It was just, it is yet to be commissioned, but because of COVID, but this unit is now existing at the field station. And the goal of this unit is to actually train stakeholders, first of all, on how these technologies work, so that you can see and appreciate the technologies. We have the cool pot cold room there. We have the new improved charcoal cooler there. We have the new improved evaporative zero energy evaporative cooler there, and then we have the new one that is coming, the one that is based on phase change materials. So if you have people that need to be trained on cold storage, not only how the technologies work, but I have a team of engineers that can actually train people on how to fabricate these technologies on farm. So this is our new project which we are promoting, and on this I want to encourage, if you have people that want to be trained on cold storage technologies, this is a unit that we can train. Okay, so in next slide, please. In conclusion, I'd just like to mention the fact that one, I think when people hear about a cold chain, you imagine some really sophisticated things, you know, cold room, conventional cold room, and you know, refrigerated truck. You know, so you look for a smallholder farmer, that sounds like something that is really beyond their reach. But I can say for a fact that really smallholder farmers can actually achieve desirable cold chain by adopting very simple practices and you know, adopting this low cold storage technology that I've mentioned. These are just some of the technologies, and really they can also achieve that cold chain and contribute to, you know, these losses that we see at the farm level. So thank you so much for listening to me. I'm sure we'll have some questions at the end. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prof. And that's quite enlightening, and congratulations for the center that you've just set up. I'm quite excited about it because I know it will really, you know, give information to a lot of farmers and a lot of young people who are going to give out information to the farmers. So Dixon is back. Karibu, Dixon. So we'll give an opportunity to Dixon to introduce himself and go straight into his presentation. Then we'll have Martin's presentation after. Karibu, Dixon.
Thank you, Nekesa, and welcome all to the presentation for tonight. My name is Dixon Kimathi. I am an agricultural professional, having trained in Egerton University for my undergraduate. Started working almost 20 years ago, from actually becoming almost a doer to where I am today, working through the roles, different roles, until today where I end.
Hello, Dixon. Hello. Dixon, please proceed. Sorry.
You got me?
I think we lost you halfway. You can probably tell us after the 20 years, because that's where we lost you.
Sorry. So basically, I'm saying that I've done a master's in agriculture entrepreneurship from the University of Nairobi, and also I'm a basis and facts qualified professional. I have been handling basically so many practices from in Kenya and Tanzania, and I'm also a director at FPIC. Currently, also chairing as a chair and the food safety committee in Soka, but with my busy schedule, I think I've been a little bit lost. So basically, that is it. Maybe I can start with my presentation for today.
Yeah, please proceed. I think Ricky has already shared the screen. Yes.
Okay. Now, basically today I'm looking at pre-harvest management strategies, measuring in safety and minimum losses. I will be talking about at large, basically, in terms of what. Ricky, can you go to the next slide, please? I will be talking about basically the broad sources of food safety concerns, which are looking at physical, microbial, and chemical. But my major topic today will be on chemical contaminants, because that's basically where we are looking at. And what is food safety? Basically, it's the discipline of growing, handling, and preparation and storage of food to ensure that it's safe for consumption in our bodies and also to the environment. Can we move the next slide, please? Now, just a little mention of the physical contaminants. We are looking at foreign bodies in food. This, I'll give an example of maybe dust, mud, a piece of stick, a piece of metal. This basically can be able to be sorted out easily because they're visible. You can be seen in the farm and also can be graded out at the grading shed. These are basically visible, but today, just for mention. Next slide, please. We do have the other part of, no, sorry, back, Ricky. Yes, we do have also microbial contaminants. We are looking at microbes, for example, Salmonella, E. coli, Listeria, etc. These basically are the ones which tamper with or basically affect the product. I mean the quality of the produce we are taking. This is contaminated from either the inputs you're using, for example, manure, and there are various ways of in terms of what manure is not bad. It can be used, but basically there is the way that you can. There's a process that you can use risk assessment in terms of using manure, contaminated water, dirty equipment, human handling, as well as transport vehicles can have an issue. These contaminants, unfortunately, cannot be seen by a naked eye, but they can be sorted out, especially at the post-harvest washes. Next slide. Thank you. Now, this is the main topic for today for me. I'm talking about chemical contaminants. And this is basically the presence of residues in or chemical active ingredients in food. Again, they can't be seen with a naked eye, but through an analysis in a scientific lab. We call it maximum residual level, MRLs. This is basically the highest levels legally tolerated in food. And different active ingredients, as you all know, maybe as you are aware, they do have different levels of MRLs. There are some which have been set to the least level, which we call LOD, level of determination, basically. That is the least level. There are some which have allowances. So basically that is the MRL. To me, I will be looking at chemical contamination. Ricky, next. Right. Now, pesticides are our friends. We normally use pesticides. I've seen so many clips talking about people using pesticides, but we've seen that in the tropics, especially, pesticides are increased to be dependent on. People are coming up with biopesticides nowadays, but we cannot. Yes, there are people who are growing organic chemicals. I mean, organic produces, but pesticides normally can be used. But how can we safely use our pesticides? The first thing I'll say is you need to know where you're growing your crop. You need to learn the risk assess. We've seen where someone has grown a crop, he has not used that pesticide or that active ingredient, and because the previous land use was maybe using something
Hello, we seem to have lost Dixon. Okay, so maybe Martin, before Dixon reconnects back to his presentation, we can have you do your presentation before he gets back.
Okay.
Yeah, Ricky, you can assist with the projection. Okay, he's joined us back. Okay. Sorry, Dixon, yeah. Please unmute yourself.
Thank you.
Okay.
I was talking about the pesticide safety land risk assessment, where we're looking at the previous crop. We can have residues coming from the chemicals that have been used. So you need to ensure that you know what was growing and what chemicals were being used before you plant your crop. Can we get to the next slide, Ricky? Right. The other thing is about how to avoid issues on pest is pesticide residues is on seed treatment. We all know that we are using seed that has been treated mostly, but that is normally an issue, especially in the short day crop like herbs. We know some herbs take 4 weeks, 6 weeks to from plant to harvest. So if you're going to use a seed treatment on that particular seed that you buy, you must ensure that it is clear before the harvesting date. The other way of ensuring that we are safe in terms of usage of pests and chemicals to avoid chemical contaminants is we normally use IPM crop management, where using a pesticide when it is necessary. It's not a must that you use pesticides. You can use other strategies to ensure that your crop grows through. There's a cultural, there's a physical, there's a biological, before you come with a pesticide. If you have to use it, you need to use it on the correct way. That is, follow the product label, because it's very clear. It shows you the amount you're going to use. It shows you the PHI, the safe days of harvesting. It shows you how to apply and all those things. So basically, you need to use the correct pesticide as directed on the label. Can I get the next slide? Now, this is a very big one. Observe safe harvest days. what is normally known as PHI, that's pre-harvest interval, is basically very important because once you spray, you have introduced, I call it quote unquote an hazard to the crop. So you need to ensure that you're observing the safe, because safe harvest days. Every chemical in the product label shows you as a user how many days you need to observe. Some of them are even 0 days. Some of them are up to 40 days, 42 days. You need to ensure you're looking at that one, the PHI. And it's supposed to be, this system can be use a simple system. For example, if you have a farm, when the chemical is sprayed and is not clear, some farms are use red, and when it's clear, you can use green flag to ensure that this crop or this block is clear, because not everyone knows what's there when it's being sprayed. Remember, we spray our crops late in the evening, early morning, so sometimes the workers are not in. So you need to train your workers on how do you observe the PHI or the safe harvest days. They can also use PHI tapes. You've seen round the blocks. The other areas where you use block approval boards, where in the morning where you have your pickers, where they assemble, you can tell them today you're going to pick block 1B, 1Z. You tell them which block they're going to use. This system, you need to ensure that your workers are made aware of what system you are using to ensure the safe harvest days are observed. We've had instances where people get in the wrong block and harvest the wrong block, which is not clear to pick. So it's always good to ensure that everyone in the farm is aware what method are we using, so that when I see a red flag, I know that is danger. I mean, it's not danger, that block has been sprayed, it's not clear to pick. And when I see a green one, we can harvest that block. Next slide, please. Now, I mentioned that we always allow application of pesticides because we have to use them. So in most of the crops that we are growing, but there are ways of doing it safely. The spray equipment you're using, the measured equipment you're using can be a source of contamination. If the spray equipment is not in good condition, there's a real risk the amount you're applying, because every chemical has a dosage. Remember I told you about the product label? That's a dosage where you need to apply, you're going to look at the dosage you're going to apply. So if you're going to use a wrong application equipment or not functioning equipment, there's a chance that you're actually applying either a lot.
Okay, so we seem to have lost him again, but as he's reconnecting, because it seems today we are having an issue with the internet. So as he's reconnecting, maybe just one question to like Professor. When you're talking about the cold chains, basically the practices, how are our farmers in terms of the knowledge, the know-how of these cold chain storage facilities that are being presented to us today? What is the knowledge that they have about this cold storage, Dr. Professor?
Okay, so I think you said you're asking, I think you broke a bit, but you're asking if farmers are aware of if farmers are aware or what knowledge they have, or I didn't get the question right. Just repeat again.
What is the kind of knowledge that our farmers have about these cold chain storage facilities, especially the ones presented, like the charcoal cooler, these technologies? What kind of level do they, of understanding do they have about these facilities from your experience?
Okay, so basically, like I said, charcoal cooler is not really new. It's there's a lot of quite a number of farmers that use it, but for us, what we have done, what we've been trying to do under various projects that we supported by NRF, Rockefeller Foundation, and other partners, is actually to first of all adapt, modify what is already in existence. So if you check the presentation I had, we are trying to look for, even because we have charcoal cooler. Charcoal cooler is an old technology. And one of the questions I remember being asked one time when I had wrote an article about charcoal cooler, and somebody asked about charcoal cooler being not friendly to the environment because you have to cut trees to burn the charcoal. So of course we are research institutions. So what we're doing currently, besides just promoting what is already there, is to research into alternatives to charcoal. Okay, so we're actually working with other partners. We're working with MIT from the US to actually test other alternatives to charcoal. So that is one. But really, in terms of what is already in existence, we are actually, I think I've really shouted myself hoarse about these technologies. In every forum I go, I always talk about these technologies being there. And remember I mentioned, we even with support from Rockefeller Foundation, we established what we are calling like a satellite lab for us in Karurumo as a center where we have all these technologies. We have charcoal cooler, we have the zero energy brick cooler, we have the coolbot cold room. Besides that, we also have the other drying technology and processing technologies. We are using that as a way where, like, if farmers around that area can actually come to Karurumo to learn about this technology. We have that. We also have another center in a place called Masi in Machakos, where we've also built for them a charcoal cooler, brick cooler. So that is for us a way of, in quotes, devolving this from the university, so that uko mashinani, farmers can go there in Machakos, in Embu. We even have another center we've established in Kiambu for farmers in a place called, I've forgotten the name, some place in Kiambu. We have a charcoal cooler there and a brick cooler. And soon we have another center in Turkana, in a market. We have built for them a charcoal cooler and brick cooler. So that is us reaching out to farmers so that, if they don't have to come to the university, the unit we have just built is for training. If you want, you can come to the university, we'll show you. But if you don't come to the university, already we have those centers outside the university where you can go and see those technologies, not for research, but actually in use with the farmers.
Thank you so much, Prof. So Dixon, I think you'll continue with the presentation. Karibu tena.
Panelists, I'm very sorry. I think I'm experiencing funny connectivity. Sorry for that. I'm finished about the cleaning of your spray equipment to avoid contamination. Because if you've sprayed, for example, a chemical which has a PHI of 28 days, like a mancozeb, and then you don't properly clean it, and using a short PHI, you'll go to harvest your crop, thinking that your produce is safe, but you may be picked up with a, if you're lucky, you may be picked up with an LOD, if not an MRL, because of lack of proper cleaning of equipments. Can I get the next slide? Right. The other thing about is you need to look at your neighboring activities, crops which are there. We know your neighbors can be a source of contamination if you're not careful. We normally look at the distance from crop to crop, and also the equipment that you're using. For example, if you're using a boom sprayer, you need to have about 18 meters because if you're going to spray, 5 meters, sorry, if you're going to spray next to a block which is very close, then you will have issues in drift. And for example, if you're spraying the right times, you will have contamination coming from a drift. We've always advised, especially the small growers, to have border crops across their blocks. If you go, for example, in a place like Meru, where land is very little, people are growing 1 kg of French beans, for example, you'll find that the blocks are neighboring each other. So if you're going to use, one person is with tomatoes, another person is with fine beans. If you don't have a good border crop, there's a chance that the guy who was doing tomato spray is not careful about the drift, then there's a chance that there can be a contamination. Finally, I want to talk about contaminated water. I remember in my profession, there's a time I was speaking with an MRL, which I actually didn't know where it came from because we never used any pesticide with that active ingredient. And when we went to investigate, we found that the water we were using to spray was basically heavily contaminated with some industrial pesticides, because they're using also some pesticides which comes into, or chemicals which comes with different active ingredients, as well as heavy metals. So you need to be careful on where you're farming. This is closely related with the land risk assessment. If you're going to farm, then you need to assess your land properly to ensure that you're doing it at the right place. Can I get the last? I think I will be waiting for questions later.
Thank you so much, Dixon. I think despite the challenges, we've managed to deliver the message. And we hope that there are so many questions that are popping up, and also I'm getting some on the side. So you'll definitely be answering some. You'll be in a hot seat in a few minutes. So Karibu, Martin.
Thank you.
Ricky, can we get Martin's slides, please?
Yes, please. Okay, thank you, Ricky. Post-harvest losses is a very broad subject, and today I'll focus on dejections due to pesticide residues, failure to observe PHI, as my friend Kimadia said, and also poor harvest and poor handling of produce. Next slide, please. So why should we do or focus on post-harvest losses? I've been working in a farm setup for so long, and the drive to reduce post-harvest losses is supposed to be a very serious one. In my introduction to this topic, I've clearly stated that the profitability of horticultural businesses today will actually be determined by the value of losses, the value in monetary terms. If you key in the losses in your balance sheet as a business, you realize that all the profit went into the losses, into the post-harvest losses. This is because when you're losing a produce post-harvest, you have incurred all the costs in producing this produce. You've incurred the chemical costs, fertilizer cost, labor cost, and other overhead costs. So it is very important to focus on reducing post-harvest waste in farms, or even in small farms owned by the farmers. Next slide. So here I'll look at pesticide residues and failure to observe PHI. Where do the residues come from then? First, there are pound chemicals, especially those against fungal diseases. When these are spread into the product, into our plants, at some point, even after the PHI, the residues remain. The residues have two effects. One effect on quality. The presence of residues on pods or fruits, this will cause some quality issues, and this will be a rejection either at packers level or even at the customer level if it goes to the customer. It's also a safety issue because if someone consumes the residues, this becomes a safety issue. Sometimes we use stickers and wetters in our sprays to enhance the efficacy of the chemicals. When you use too much of these, also it can cause, it can bring some residues or sticky substances on the products. Some overdose using very high rates, either intentionally or not knowing. And overdosing also can cause a lot of residues on the produce. When someone harvests produce before the PHI is over, then the residues will remain there. So what are we supposed to do to mitigate this? We should use the rates that and PHI that is recommended on the label. Where possible, use chemicals that have less residues. And this is a challenge that they normally give to the chemical manufacturers. They need to come with molecules that can give us less residues on the product. Then farmers, the small-scale farmers, some of them do not know how even to read. So in this case, they need to look for someone who can read and interpret the label information for them. Sometimes you can irrigate or spray water to remove the residues before harvesting. This is in case after even the PHI, the residues remain. So you can spray or sprinkle water to remove the residues. Next slide. So farmers need a lot of training on this by extension officers. Agrochemical companies, agronomists also can help. Volunteers can also come in, like myself. When I go home for leave, some farmers come for me, go to their farm and advise them for free. Then for produces that are not sensitive to greases, you can wipe them. So others you can wash or dip into solutions that are food grade. Now, poor harvest. Poor harvest can cause a lot of waste. And here we are supposed to follow the harvesting procedures for every crop, and every crop has its own procedure. I'll give an example of avocado. Farmers harvest avocado in 3 ways. One, someone they under the tree, they till the land to make sure that there is loose soil. Then someone climbs the tree and drops the fruits. What happens when the fruit falls on the soil? It might not be bruised or damaged. But when another fruit falls on another fruit, then both of them breaks. The other way they harvest the avocados is by climbing a tree with a bag. And then they harvest the fruits and put them on the bag. These, again, inside the bag, they bruise themselves. But then currently there is a better way of harvesting avocados. That is, you have a stick that has a net. You cut one avocado after another, falling into the net. When you have 5 of them, then you can put them on a crate. These technologies are there and being used currently by the farmers. Like French beans, when harvesting, poor harvesting methods also can lead to a lot of waste. Like fine beans, if you are harvesting and you remove the stalk, and the produce will be used like with a tail in the packers, that becomes a waste. So poor harvest methods can lead to post-harvest losses. Another thing is post-harvest handling. How do we handle after post-harvest? Here you need to map the whole process. how many times do you handle the produce? And by reducing the number of times that you handle the produce, then you reduce the damages that lead to the losses. I'll give an example of the French beans. When after harvesting, they're put onto crates or and other packagings, held at the farm, transported either to a grading shed or a store. They again sorted, then stored again, and then transported either to the market or the collection sheds. If this can be used to these are like 6 steps. If this can be reduced to 4 steps, then less damages will happen, and at the end of it, we'll have less loss. Next slide, please. So, what are the solutions to these aspects? At a farm setup, ASAP is everything. ASAP is able to handle the food safety, and it's widely used to handle food safety. But ASAP can also be used to handle issues of damages. You can do a risk assessment on where the damages are coming from in your produce. Identify every cause of bruises or damages at every stage of handling. After that, then you can do a ASAP plan that will have control measures against every cause of the damage. And then in the ASAP plan, then it just asks who will do that by when. This way, you can reduce the amount of waste. ASAP traditionally is used for food safety in terms of contaminants, but ASAP can also be used to reduce waste by mitigating all risks that bring up the damages and hence the loss. I've done this for flowers, and I have a book I've written on ASAP flowers, basically targeting the damages. So how can we then reduce handling at every level as much as possible? The first thing to do is to map all the processes. And in every process, state all the activities that happened in every process. And then see how you can eliminate some of these handlings in every process. At the end of it all, you'll have reduced the damages and the losses that would have occurred in every stage. Then use of appropriate packaging materials and design. This one, I mean, current farmers used to use sacks for avocados. When fruits are inside the sack, already they are damaging each other because of the pressure. Currently, they're using now the crates. When the fruits are arranged properly into the crate, and when you place one crate on top of the other without overloading it, then you reduce the damages by even 40%. This has been done practically and working very well. Then you need to understand the storage periods for each crop that we handle. Some crops will go bad after a very short period of time, others after a prolonged period. Others, the crops also require different conditions of storage. Some needs to be in drier area, others need to be in more humid areas. Also, temperatures are different. Like basils and herbs requires, when you're storing them, you need to store them in a cluster that is around 8 to 12 degrees, so that you achieve the 10 and the 12, 10 to 12. But others like thyme require 2 to 4 degrees. So when also designing your cold stores, you need to put in consideration the produce that you have. Because if you store basil in very cold temperature, you'll for sure lose it to frost damages. If you store thyme at very high temperature, at the end of it, you'll also lose it due to heat damage. Next slide, please. So these are the talk points. These are points that we were to talk about when it comes to minimizing those losses. Reducing post-harvest losses starts light from planting point. Doesn't start just after post-harvest. It starts from planting. Proper variety selection. Some varieties are sensitive than others to damages, for example. And both of them are acceptable in the market. Then you need to select a variety that is less sensitive compared to the other one. Some varieties are more marketable to the others. A variety that is more marketable will really move fast. There will be no prolonged storage of these kind of varieties. So when the product is moving to from farm to the market quickly, the losses are reduced. Other varieties can be stored longer periods and others cannot. So you need to select the one that you can store for longer to avoid the storage losses. Planting programs. Some people plant a lot more than they can handle. And when it comes to harvesting, they start losing product because they can either not cope with harvesting or storage of the same crop. So when planting, you need to have a program that will fit, that is within your capacity. Then proper spacing. Most people do dense crop population to increase the yield. But they forget that when spacing is too close, harvesting and other casual practices becomes difficult. And in the process, like harvesting, you waste a lot of product because there is not enough space for this activity. So spacing should be sufficient enough for harvesting and other casual practices to avoid losses even before the produce goes to the packers or to the market. Then you need to harvest produce when it's at the optimal maturity stage or level. I'll give an example for avocados. When the demand is high for avocados, farmers harvest them immature. When it's immature, it will not ripen. So what happens is at sorting, all these avocados are rejected. After even rejecting, they cannot be used at a local level if they were for export because they're not ripen. But if the farmer waited for this avocado to mature even for another like 1 week, you'd have gotten a lot of money out of this. So maturity is another thing to consider so that to reduce on waste. Next slide, please. You also need to have enough packaging materials when harvesting, for example. If you don't have enough packaging materials like crates or whatever material you're using, this will cause damages. In this way, whoever is doing the harvest will try to overload the crates. When the crates are overloaded, and then again another crate is placed on top of another, and already the one below is overloaded, we lose a lot of produce. So these are like planning. It's a planning thing before harvesting. You need to plan and ensure that you have enough packaging materials before you embark into harvesting. Also, we need to harvest at the right time of the day, depending on crops. The crops that are sensitive to temperatures, to high temperatures, you can harvest them early in the morning or later in the day, depending with the weather that time. The ones that are not sensitive to high temperatures, then they can be harvested at the middle of the day. These few practices can help reduce the losses that we get due to temperature issues. Then another point is on post-handling and hygiene. Post-produce handling, for farms, they have the ASAP. And the ASAP is a great tool in handling, in produce handling and hygiene. Why? In every process, in ASAP, the risk assessment, for example, it states all activities happening in every step. Then you do the ASAP plan that will sort out all issues, that all risks that were identified. And implementing the other plan to the letter, not for other plan just to be in paper, is very important. And this should be the greatest management tool that can be used to handle produce properly and to make sure it's safe for consumption. Some farms have quality manuals, but some of them do not use these quality manuals. They need to be implemented. And when you implement them, then again, you need to review them with time. You decide as a management, we'll be reviewing our manual and our asset plans every 3 months. This way, you will remove from the manuals what is not practical on the ground, and then include in the manual what is being practiced in the ground, in the field or in the packers. Then cool chain management. Professors talked about this one in length, but every produce is supposed to be stored at the right temperature, as I've explained. Understand every crop before you design storage for it. Use of charcoal coolers in the fields. This is widely used in some farms. Use of refrigerated trucks. Some currently there are a lot of refrigerated trucks to hire. Farmers, for example, they group themselves into a certain number of farmers, and they hire this one truck to take the produce to the airport or another destination. I've spoken about the time of the day to transport also. Some transport very early in the morning, which is good. Trucks leaving the farms or the points of departure as early as 4 a.m. And then they'll have like a 3 hours drive. This will also help in temperature controls. Then arrangement of produce in coasters and even the trucks to maximize cooling. Arrangement is very important in a coaster or in a truck because there is a way you'll arrange produce in a coaster and you block the circulation of the cold air. So you need to understand the principle of working of the equipment that you're using before starting arranging the produce into a coaster or into a truck. Next slide. Next slide, please. Now, there is currently there is the availability of data loggers and at very cheap prices. The data loggers are really helping in monitoring the temperatures from the farm to the market, and then you can understand at what point was the temperature abused. And when you understand the point that the temperature was abused, then you can take the corrective actions required. Then the post-harvest logistics. After processing and everything has been done, the produce has another journey to do. And within this journey, a lot of waste also occurs. I'll give the current example. Documentation. Long documentation is the second highest cause of interceptions by KFIS and the receiving National Plant Protection Organization on the other side. Why? If the documents are not tallying with the physical product, then that's an interception. An interception leads to product quality deterioration, hence loss. Why? This product will be stored for longer period than required for the documents to be brought again and for the product again to be cleared. So we need to ensure that as we start our logistics, the documentation is correct and the way it's supposed to be done. Also, for documentation, you can do ASAP. You can do a risk assessment on where you can go long on documentation, and then do a ASAP plan of these risks and do corrective measures and how to mitigate these errors on the documentations that can lead to interceptions. Timely transport of product will avoid off-roads. Off-roads is where the product is going to the airline, and then it's late. Then the airline says, we'll not accept this product. This product will again stay for another 3 or 4 days before it's flown. This delay or this another storage will for sure cause some damages on the other side. This means after the 4 days and the product goes to the customer, there can be claims. And these claims are very costly because they're also involving the freight cost. Then inspection. You mean to make sure that the produce going to the destinations is free of pests. Why? Pests will cause the interceptions by the inspecting bodies. And when this product is rejected, for sure, these are total loss because it will not be exported and that has been transported to the point of export. Thank you very much. We'll be waiting for the questions.
Thank you very much, Martin, and thank you for the presentation. That was quite informative. So just to go straight into the questions, when you're looking at the cold chain, I don't know if Professor Ambuko is still there, but just looking at the cold chain storage, and I'm looking at a price of $6,000, $6,600. Do you think that this is something that our farmers can afford, especially when we're talking about smallholder farmers? And even the $500 to $600, what can be done to, make these products affordable to our farmers, and especially if we're targeting smallholder farmers? That's one question. Then we also have the chemical contaminants. I'm glad that Dixon has brought this up because that is something that we have ignored. And obviously, for obvious reasons, people do not think about it as a post-harvest management, issue. But when you're looking at chemicals, especially when you're talking about the residues on the fruit or the residues on the leaf of the plant, what happens to these chemicals? And this is a question from Midamo. If you see visibly, does washing off those chemicals really help you after the product has been harvested and it's on your, in your kitchen, you want to cook it? Does washing off those chemicals really help at any point? And the other issue is the water. What is your advice about the water that we use, especially on irrigation and even washing our own products? Does it mean that we have to test, especially when we're talking about the heavy metal contaminants? And this is really worrying because you might have the right process of production, yet at the point of consumption, then you add these chemicals onto your products and it ends up in your system. What is your advice about the water that we are currently using as Kenyans, as Africans, as the world? What is your advice on that? Maybe we can take those before we proceed to more questions. We could have Dixon answering some and probably Martin follows. Dixon, your mic is on mute.
Thank you very much for the questions. I'll take the first one in terms of chemical contaminants. If washing basically solves the problem, I would say yes and no. It will solve the physical, what you're seeing. For example, if you're using the copper, you'll just wash the color of what you're seeing, but whatever is inside the product, that is inside your food, inside your vegetables, because there are various mode of action in terms of chemicals or active ingredients. So if it is inside the vegetables or the fruit, even if you wash, that is not possible. It's not going to clear anything. And this is basically, if you look at high care products, for example, you wash runner beans, wash leaf salads, they still get caught with active ingredients, even though they've been cleared. What you can wash is only the physical, what you're seeing, the brown chemical, the blue copper, but the instant or what has gone in, the which has gone into the product, it's not possible to get it because various actives have modes of transport, modes of action inside the produce, that is inside your fruit and inside your vegetable. The next one is, I hope I've answered that one, Mekesa.
Yes, that is clear. That is very clear.
And the next one was about the use of water, heavy metals, contaminants. Now, that's the challenging one. And that's why I said, if you're setting up a farm, you need to be very careful on the location and the source of water you're setting, because some of these contaminants, they're almost impossible to get them out of the water you're using. Some of them, there are other chemicals you can use to decant the contaminants, especially the physical contaminants. But if it is a chemical contaminant, sometimes it's impossible to get it out of the water. So for me, I will go and say that you need to risk assess. For example, if it's a heavy metal which contaminant which is coming into your water, you do not need to use that water or need to set up a farm while you know the source of water is heavily contaminated. If you look at the requirement for global audits nowadays, that is a real concern. Previously, water was a recommendation in global gap, but as we grew with the standard, they became that was a huge source of contaminants. So it becomes actually it became from recommendation criteria to now it is a major criteria. You cannot comply if your water is not safe to use for production in agriculture. So it's upon the farmer to ensure that they're using, they have safe water. I have seen some farmers basically use, for example, when you have muddy water, I've seen some farmers use aluminium silicate to remove the mud from the water, especially using for the spray. I don't have any standard linking. You can get a residue with that, but the farmers need to be careful also on what kind of chemicals to remove the turbidity of the water they're using, because some of them will be picked up in the crop. Some of them are lethal. So it's always, for me, I'll go for the risk assessment at the start of a farm. Thank you.
Martin, can you take the question on the call, the chain pricing?
Yes, I will. I think cool chain for farmers, we need to take the milk coolers way, where farmers organize themselves as groups, and then within the regions that they are, the cold stores are built either by the national government, the county governments, or the donors. We need to really like explore this option, because to me, this is the only way we can get cold stores for farmers. The same way the milk coolers were done, and now they're over where the milk production is being done. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Martin. And there's a comment by Lucy who says, Professor Jen, you have a very beneficial initiative, but how can we achieve food safety and a cold chain management for food crops that are not for export? Given once farmers sell their produce, they are no longer in control. They do not have control over handling of produce. And I think this ties in well with one of the questions that I had in terms of the handling. We saw what Professor presented, especially on transportation. What are we looking at here? The quantity versus quality of what we are getting. Considering the logistics, what is your advice, especially being the food safety experts? What is your advice when it comes to our market? When you're talking about our market and not the export market, what can we do to ensure that whatever we are getting in our markets, in our Marikiti, in our city market, in our Kangemi market, Kawangware market, is actually safe for us to consume without also, risking the fact that farmers can also lose out in terms of the logistical cost of bringing the products into like a city like Nairobi or Nakuru? what is your advice on that? Dixon, you can take a part of it, and probably Martin can.
Thank you, Nakesa. I will say that basically it's a challenge, that one, looking at the kind of external extension services we have in the country and the counties. But we need to start from somewhere. And with the county governments, I think it's a low-hanging fruit for me. We can start from there, because basically they do have a setup for the agriculture sector, where basically we can be able to train our farmers, the aggregators, the transporters, because the export guys have done a lot of due diligence trainings and all those things. And sometimes when you go to the farms, you find a farmer saying, this one is for export, this is for local, so I can misbehave on the local production, I mean the local crop. So for me, it is an issue of trying to sensitize the farmers, awareness of the farmers, to ensure they have a change in terms of the behavior. I'm also looking about the marikiti and the local supermarkets. There's a change, there's a move from what we saw 5 years ago. Today we walk to the high-end supermarkets, even the neighbors of this world, they will actually ask you for at least a global gap or Kenya gap certificate, if you do have it, and a registration to ACP. So for me, I think, yes, we are moving in the right direction, but a little bit on the slower side, but with more county involvement, whereby we send making more awareness to the farmer, making more awareness to the transport people, the aggregators, the mama bogas, we can achieve food safety, because it all starts with everyone. And more messages in national, the media, more messages in even in our media, in the TVs, in the radio. That would will go a long way to help. Okay, sir.
Martin, anything else you can add on that, on the food safety for the local, especially targeting the local market, because that's where we have a gap, and it's really, there's so much that we can do as professionals. What would be your advice on that? Please unmute your mic.
Hello.
Hello. Hi, Professor. Yeah, karibu tena. Sorry, we lost you.
Yes, I had to step out to set up for something else. I told Ricky, because I had another meeting at 8:30. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, so I think the question was about food safety for our domestic market, and I think Martin has explained. I think the fears we have is our concern really is for the export market. But just recently, I think is it 2017, 2018, where the standard also, which applies even for the domestic market, was launched. We developed that standard at the Kenya Bureau of Standards. But the challenge is that I think it's implementation. Really, nobody seems to care about what is there in the local market. That's why there are a lot of issues about residues, and even people are using chemicals to preserve, the post-harvest quality of produce in the market. People are apparently using some harmful chemicals even to ripen fruits. But the thing is that it's like there's no policing for the domestic market, and so I think we just need to, I don't know there was a debate on some other forum about whose responsibility is it to, to police what is really in the domestic market. Yeah, because I think what Martin said, the fact that we've been working with smallholder farmers in aggregation. We have, like I said, we have established this aggregation centers in at least 4 regions. And one of the things we can work together with the other experts now on food safety and everything is to ensure that farmers are really trained. Yeah, like for the project that we're working on, we've been working in partnership with the Technoserve, who do the pre-harvest part to ensure that, you know, farmers observe the right practices during production, you know, using the right chemicals, you know, for pest and disease management. And then so that the produce that comes, because if we could have a way of ensuring the produce that comes to the aggregation center, which then leaves for either domestic or export market, meet some certain quality standards. That is part of making sure that our farmers also, you know, take care of the produce, you know, ensure that the produce that that they let into the local market is also safe for us. So we need to train farmers what is right, what has to be done. But beyond that, policing in the market, somebody has to do that. And then somebody was saying, it's not my role as you know, when I go to buy tomatoes, I don't know if the farmer observed the PHI, you know. We just buy. They are there. We just buy. We don't know if we are just you know, eating these chemicals. So it's a big challenge. But some enforcement of what is already there in terms of standards is required, because the standards are there, or rather the regulations are there. It's just a question of ensuring that you know, the people adhere to these regulations that are there already.
Thank you so much, Prof. And maybe one question for you was about the costing of the technologies that the University of Nairobi has presented. How affordable? What are you doing in terms of scaling them to the level where a normal smallholder farmer can be able to afford this? Because we know the dynamics of being in groups. Some farmers want to move ahead, some want to take it slow. So what are the dynamics? Are there products that you are scaling down so that they can be adopted by farmers in terms of individual when they're smallholder and their budgets? What are you looking at when it comes to these products?
So, you know, in my presentation, I talked about, there are three technologies that I talked about. The CoolBot is actually, I said, is an innovation from the US. And believe you me, if you look at the parts, like a CoolBot cold room has three components. It has the CoolBot, which is the electronic gadget, which is the technology. And then we have the insulated room, okay? And then we have the air conditioner. There are three components of a CoolBot cold room. Now, you see the AC, really, it just needs to be the compatible one. And then the wall, I've seen places outside of here, like this technology is already in India and parts of Asia, where they just take like a container, and then you insulate a container, you know, the normal container that is used for shipping, insulate it. And then you get a compatible AC, and then the CoolBot. So when I talked about the cost, I said the CoolBot cold room, the cost could range from 6,000 to 7,000. It could even come lower, say to 5,000, if you then improvise, because the technology is cheap. Actually, the CoolBot gadget, the market price for it is just $300. But then what you do with the other components, how you source the other components, then determines how cheap your CoolBot cold room is. Then I talked about the charcoal cooler. Again, the charcoal cooler would cost you somewhere between, because the charcoal cooler, the version that I showed you is a 4x4, and putting it together plus the walls and everything would cost you between $5,000 to $6,000. Again, you had me say that we're trying to look at what are the alternative materials that can be used to bring down, because for us, like I said, we want to ensure that these technologies are affordable. Now you come to the brick cooler. Now that is the cheapest of them all, because a farmer can actually burn the bricks, because it's just the way the charcoal cooler, the brick cooler is made, is just a double wall made from bricks. That means the cost depends on how affordable are the bricks, because it's bricks and then you need riverbed sand, and then you need a cover to it. So it can cost somewhere between $200 to as high as $1,000, depending on availability of these materials. You see, if I'm a farmer in the village, I could get riverbed sand from the river, that could almost be free. say for moving it to my farm, and then I can burn the bricks. That could be free, you know. And then all I need is to have the drip system. So the thing can, the storage technology can cost very little depending on availability of these materials. That's why I said we established this unit at the university where we can actually train people and show them the alternatives that could actually be used to, you know, bring down the cost and make the technology even more affordable to the farmers.
Thank you so much, Prof, for that clarity in that matter. I'm sure you'll be getting a lot of inquiries about it, especially when it comes to, you know, just developing something that is local, that can be made from local materials and something that is affordable for our farmers. Martin, one last question to Martin in terms of the HASP. Some of us might understand what HASP is, but just breaking it down for the smallholder farmer who might not have an idea of what HASP is there a way you can simplify this for the farmer, just maybe in 4 steps, just what is HASP, especially when it comes to the whole process of handling?
Okay, actually, when people hear of the word as they think it's a very technical, but once you understand it, is actually a very good tool. ASAP is a tool that is used in traditionally for mitigating contamination of produce, so that to ensure that food is safe for consumption. In everything you do traditionally is to make sure that the food that you're producing is not harmful to the user. And ASAP came to help in making sure that produce is safe. So in essence, ASAP is a process of ensuring that the produce that you're producing and processing is safe for human consumption. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And for those who do not know the whole, you know, definition of HACCP, I hope I get it correct. It's Hazard Analysis Critical Control Point. So you identify as what Martin has described that. So maybe just to give our panelists 2 minutes to, you know, give us a punchline so that when we go back to wherever we are going, we can take a message home today. Dixon?
Thank you, Nekesa. First, I must apologize for my poor connectivity. I hope I passed my message through. Then I want to say that I think food safety is something that is here to stay with us, and we need to be looking at what we're eating every single day. For me, it's awareness, because previously people just bought food without even thinking about how safe is that food. I want to go back to maybe where the EU were 2001, 2002, when they came up with Europe Cup then. They also didn't have much thoughts about the same previously, because I remember when I was growing up, farmers were just spraying and harvesting the next day. There was no issue of MRL, there was nothing, right? But they thought about themselves, they thought about what they're eating. So the message I want to pass here is that we as Kenyans, we also need to think about ourselves. We have the power as consumers to demand for safe food. Yes, I know the kind of setup economically we are in, it may take a long time, but we need to start from somewhere. I'm happy to see some of the supermarket now asking growers to show that they have grown the food following due diligence. So I think we are starting somewhere, but also we need like everyone to be concerned about what you are consuming. So that is my parting shot. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Dixon.
Thank you.
Professor Ambuko.
Okay, so I talked about food losses and post-harvest losses reduction. And as I put in my slide, one of my slides, I say that when we lose food, we just don't lose the food. There's more that goes with it, the water, the energy, you know, the input that were used to produce it. And of course, we impact negatively on the environment. You know, producing food that goes to waste means we need to cultivate more land to produce more food that goes to waste. And then it's even been quantified that just the emissions of gases from food wasted is the size of emissions from a third only to the US and China. So food loss reduction is really critical and it's important, and targets have been set by, you know, under the SDGs to have them by the year 2030, under the Malabo Declaration to have by the year 2025. That means there's a lot that we need to do, you know, to help our smallholder farmers to do what needs to be done. And as you saw in my presentation, cold chain is just one of the many things that need to be done to address the factors or the drivers that lead to food loss and waste. And as I've mentioned, that we, as University of Nairobi, we are at the forefront of this in driving this agenda of post-harvest loss reduction. So we not only have that demonstration unit for just storage technologies, which we are ready to train people and ensure that people are aware of these technologies. We also have a food processing hub where we're also training farmers and processors on how to value add food that meets the quality standards. So I think we all have a role to do as players in this industry. So let us all do our role to actually help reduce the losses and meet the targets that have been set. Thank you.
Asante sana, Prof. Martin?
Yeah, mine is still on post-harvest losses. Most of the agribusinesses in Kenya today, including the farmers, post-harvest losses.
Okay, we seem to have lost Martin. I think some internet issues. Martin, karibu tena. Yeah.
I don't know what happened. So I was saying, mine is still on the post-harvest losses. Most of agribusinesses in Kenya and farmers today are struggling in terms of making money in the margins because of post-harvest losses. Post-harvest losses is also led to achieving food safety, food security in Kenya. So I call upon business owners, farmers, and those stakeholders to be in the front line in terms of reducing post-harvest losses. We can achieve food safety in Kenya if we're able to reduce post-harvest losses in all our businesses and
Okay, asante sana to all our panelists, and we would like to thank our team, that's Angela Limo and Lillian Budia, for being the backup and help, and also to Society of Crop Agribusiness Advisors for providing the platform for this webinar and masterclass to take place. This is about the, the sixth session that we are having. We're going to have more, as you heard. This is just the tip of the iceberg. We are delving deeper. We are going to be talking about insurance. We're going to talk about, market access. So just tune in next Friday. We're going to delve deeper into the issue of post-harvest management, market access, so that we can actually link you to the experts who can give you more advice after this. Our experts are also available for contact through our office. So you can contact our office through info@soca.or.ke so that you can get more information about how to get some of these services. And as you heard, somebody like Martin is offering for free when he's on holiday. So you can contact some of our able agronomists on the group, just to get more information and insights about good agricultural practices and good production. Let's do our economics. Usibahatishe. Let's do this business in agriculture. Have a good evening, and thank you to our panelists once again.
Thank you. Bye.